Now to our special report. It's been 5 months since 5 members of the Lin family were murdered inside their home in Sydney. Police have struggled to find a motive for the killings, and the murders have so far remained unsolved. Now a senior local politician has told Lateline he believes professional killers targeted the family in a dispute over money. John Stewart reports.
Even for the most hardened police investigators, this was an extraordinary crime. 5 members of the same family bashed to death in a quiet suburban street. Early in the morning on July 18th, Mr Lin, his wife Yun Li, 2 sons, 12-year-old Henry and 9-year-old Terry, along with their aunt Irene, were all killed inside the family home. The power to the house was cut. The killer or killers entered the home without breaking doors or windows, and no weapons were left behind.
I think a lot of people, particularly older people, are still very scared. And I've been talking to people recently. They just said they put extra locks on their doors. Some of them have put special stuff on their windows, special security grills and things like that, because you just don't know what's happened, what the motive is, and whether they'd come again.
45-year-old Min Lin ran this news agency in the Sydney suburb of Epping. Greg Smith is the local MP and used to buy his newspapers from Mr Lin.
I think that the thing that really affects people about the Lin murder is that it was just so violent, and nobody can believe that people would do that to a fellow human being, and particularly to children.
Before going into politics, Greg Smith was a senior prosecutor with the Commonwealth and New South Wales governments. He believes the Lin family were murdered by professional killers, and the dispute was over money.
The whole thing sends out a message, don't mess with us, and that's probably over money. I mean, what other harm could Mr Lin have done anybody, you wouldn't think?
Dr Michael Diamond is a forensic psychologist who's worked with the New South Wales and federal police. He believes the murders were carried out by a group of men and says the attack was highly planned.
To have done this in such a cold, systematic way, to have included as victims 2 young boys, and to have conducted the whole operation of the killing with such clinical purpose, to me, points to a third party rather than somebody who has direct emotional involvement in the motive of the crime.
Dr Diamond believes the killings were intended to send a message to Sydney's Chinese community, a message about fear and power.
I would look very carefully at what sort of statement was being made and to which group, and clearly this relates to a particular group within the community.
Professor Rod Broadhurst is a criminologist who's worked in Hong Kong and China. 15 years ago, he set up a homicide monitoring database in Hong Kong to help the police solve triad murders. He says that large amounts of Chinese money are often laundered through investments in Western countries.
There is a huge amount of money, illicitly earned money, if you like, or obtained money, flowing out of China, and also a massive amount of tax evasion. So there has been a considerable amount of violence associated with that kind of activity, particularly where one party doesn't meet the expectations of the contract that might have been entered.
In China, killers can be sentenced to death. Professor Broadhurst says, for that reason, those who commit murder are often reluctant to leave potential witnesses alive.
One of the impacts of the relatively harsh criminal justice system and the widespread use of the death penalty is that offenders may often take the offence much further by committing homicide and by eliminating potential witnesses, largely as a rational act to try to avoid detection.
Last week, the New South Wales Police confirmed that investigators have been pursuing financial leads in China.
I've heard a little bit of extortion in ethnic communities, nothing specific in Epping, and the other possibility is that money was coming in from China somehow, whether he's been lent money or whether he's placing money for other people, who knows.
Mr Lin owned a house and a number of investment properties in Sydney. In 2002, he bought a news agency business here in Epping. This is one of the properties that Mr Lin owned. A document obtained by Lateline shows that he bought it in 2005 for $920,000. Today, the New South Wales Police said the investigation is still ongoing and called for anyone with information about the crime to come forward. The Lin's daughter, 15-year-old Brenda, was on a high school trip to New Caledonia when the murders took place. A trust fund has been set up to help pay for her education. John Stewart, Lateline.